Hi, I'm Peter Wawrow. I'm the Director of Research, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship at St. Clair College. So St. Clair College has 4 campuses, and the picture on the left kind of depicts the collage of all the buildings that are 3 of our campuses. So we have our Windsor South Campus, our downtown campus, which consists of Center for the Arts and Mediaplex, and we have our Chatham campus, which has our Trades and Technology Center and our Healthplex. And then we also have a campus in the Toronto region. Approximately 14,000 students attend all these campuses, and with our Windsor South campus as our primary one. We have a number of programs, over 120 programs that we offer at St. Clair College, and they're clustered into a number of different schools. So health sciences, we have programs that deal with nursing, we have vet tech, we have a number of different, any kind of program that deals with hospital type settings. Business information technology, we have that's one of the biggest schools in the college. On the information technology side, we also have a Cisco certification program, which is one of the largest in the country. Our media, art, and design, those are reserved for programs that have creative type people. Community studies, where we have programs that work with community partners and try to work with them closely. And then our engineering technologies, skilled trades, and apprenticeship. Those are all our programs that deal with all the technologies for our manufacturing industry. I just wanted to highlight a couple of the buildings we have on our South Campus. We have our Center for Applied Health Sciences. So this building houses all of our labs for all of our programs in health sciences and nursing programs. And then the Ford Center for Excellence in Manufacturing, it's a 100,000 square foot facility with 35,000 square feet of manufacturing space. And this houses all our labs in our engineering technologies and our skilled trades and apprentices programs. With respect to research, we are responsible for research that cuts across all the different programs at our college. I'm just going to highlight a few of them that relate to emerging technology. So we have our Smart Manufacturing Center, which houses labs in robotics and automation, 3D technologies. So we have VR capabilities, AR capabilities. We also have simulation and scanning technologies. And then our Applied Materials Science Lab, we have 3D printing and testing equipment for those materials. And as the automobility aspects or industry grows, we are now developing what we're calling our Green Energy Technology Center. And we have our automobility lab, which we're launching. And that's where we focus on electric, connected, autonomous, and secure vehicles. So with that, I'm pleased to present to you our next presentation. So Jim Beretta. Jim is the president at Customer Attraction Industrial Marketing. He has been an application engineer in automation, sales, and in corporate marketing for ATS Automation for most of his 16 years in the automation industry. For the last 12 years, Jim has been an independent communication professional focused on the automation, robotics, and advanced manufacturing industry. Jim has been a key resource to the industry, creating content to over 35,000 webinar attendees over the past few years, and through his new podcast, the Robot Industry Podcast, heard in over 60 countries. Jim is an avid photographer, volunteer, speaker, and runner, and is based in London, Ontario. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Peter, for that kind introduction. Again, my name is Jim Beretta, and I've just put on my some of my company logos that I do work in, and we'll talk a little bit more about the Robot Industry Podcast as I use some examples during the presentation. So welcome, everyone, and I hope you're enjoying the conference. I can't wait to see you in person again and put the pandemic behind us, although I think we all know that the pandemic is going to be with us for quite a while. Trade shows and conferences, though, I think are going to be different. They're going to be safer. They're going to be cleaner, and people will come with real projects and with intent. I want to disclose that in my marketing practice, I do a lot of work for different automation suppliers, robot manufacturers, and integrators, and I'll be using some of their images, and talking about their approaches, their technologies and strategies, as I think it's important to the conversation. I admit I have an interesting job. I get to talk and interview with all kinds of manufacturers, automation integrators, and suppliers all around the world. I wanted to also give you some context. I just finished a really interesting project for a robot manufacturer. I really liked this idea. The project was called Cobots in Canada, and the client was Universal Robots. And the point was to educate manufacturers about collaborative robots, and tell Canadians which manufacturers are using them and why. This was hard, getting manufacturers to get on stage because they have lots of reasons not to. Education is important for us in the automation industry, especially for new users. It's a constant challenge to show and prove how technologies like automation or robots or cobots can reduce rework, can improve quality, and empower workers, all while reducing risk. And this is important in Canada because I know that Canadian SMEs sometimes are a little slower to implement automated solutions in their factories. So there's a lot going on in industrial automation today. There's so many trends, and in fact, it's kind of hard to pinpoint and cut through the noise. But I hope we can parse some of these out in my presentation today, and specifically through a Canadian lens. According to A3, the Association for Advancing Automation, or some of you may know this as RIA, the second quarter orders in 2021 were up 67% over the same period in 2020. So they're returning to a kind of a pre-COVID-19 pandemic demand for automation as manufacturers and other North American companies return to business and start taking delivery of automation. North American companies ordered 9,853 robots, but valued just at over 500 million in Q2 21, up from 5,196 in Q2 2020. So that was during the peak of the pandemic. And the North American machine vision stats are really good as well. The market expanded 26% to 764 million, a new record. For January through June of 2021, the North American machine vision market grew 18% to 1.5 billion. So that's one of the best years on record, which is very encouraging. So why do we need automation? Well, there's lots of reasons. So cost control, labor scarcity, competition, time to market, opportunities, or worker safety. But more and more, we need automation for quality. That's the answer I would have given you pre-pandemic. My answer today, supply chain, and maybe reshoring. When we get to the next pandemic, we'll have PPE manufactured locally. We'll be able to mass produce vaccines for Canadians in Canada. We'll have respirators and designs. Chips will not just be manufactured in Asia or in India. So we're busy, and integrators are busy. And what's keeping us busy? Well, one of the reasons is the increased cost of labor everywhere and ongoing trade tensions with China. Manufacturers have challenges in getting automation, so they hesitated, and now they're ordering. And I believe that the ROI discussion, the return on investment, has changed. For almost my 30 years in the industry, ROI was 24 months or shorter, until a few years ago when our workforce shrunk or maybe even disappeared. Kids want to work for Google or Shopify. Parents stopped recommending trades for their children. And now manufacturers can't make their products because they can't find skilled people to operate the third shift. So we need to automate more. So I think 24 months payback has pretty much disappeared as an automation return on investment standard. So we have big challenges. We have continued skill challenges. We have lead time challenges. We have chip shortages, and we have ships waiting to be unloaded. And the industry we're seeing are just getting deliveries of whatever they can because just in time isn't working for us anymore. We're seeing robots everywhere. For my distributor friends, they're calling it the wage wars. Automotive has been the driving force for many years for automation, but for the first time in a long time, it stopped being the biggest purchaser of automation. We're seeing as well many specialized bots. We're seeing special painting bots and special packaging robots. We're seeing welding robots and larger robots, and also smaller, precision, highly accurate robots. We're seeing what's keeping us busy is distribution centers, grocery stores, automation. Amazon and Walmart are keeping robot companies and vision companies very busy. We're seeing a lot of work in medical device, in pharmaceutical automation, in battery automation, and in medical device. We're seeing lots of merger and acquisition activities. Companies are finding value in owning rather than building subsidiary companies. And we have some strange things happening too in the automation industry. I was talking to one of my integrator friends not too long ago from the KW area, and they're doing machine runoffs over Zoom, which would have never happened just a few years ago. I want to recognize a lot of the talent that we have here in Canada in the automation industry. JMP Automation, Eclipse, ATS, Premier Tech, Rico, Vista, just to name a few. And you know who you are, but there's lots of brands that we don't think of when we think of automation companies in Canada. I had the honor of building a map of advanced automation companies recently for the region of Waterloo. Because like Windsor, Essex, and Montreal, we have clusters of advanced manufacturing, vision integration, and machine builders. We need to be proud. We need to spread the word around that we have a huge talent base in industrial automation. But planning, building, commissioning automation, it's a difficult task. It's risky, it's complex. And many of the machines that we build are one-offs. They're maybe never to be built again. We also have some great startups in Canada, especially in GTA, Montreal, and the Kitchener-Waterloo area. And a lot of this is due to investments in our schools, technology transfers out of universities and colleges, regional innovation centers, and support from funders and founders. We certainly need more VCs and investors. We need more mentors and innovative government programs that help to de-risk innovators and entrepreneurs that are trying to solve the big problems. And industry here can help. And I hope as we go through the presentation, we will spur on some other people to take on some of those risks. COVID-19 has been busy for most automation companies. Initially, we didn't know what was going to happen. We had to adjust. We had to work from home. We had to adjust not visiting customers. We had to get approvals to open our businesses and figure out how to get around border restrictions. And a lot of those orders that we initially had were all put on hold. Some companies such as PIA Automation in Toronto, ATS Automation, Eclipse Automation has participated in building tools and partnerships, IP, etc., to build PPE. And I know this effort was not easy dealing with the Canadian federal government or the provincial government. And I want to recognize all these companies that helped participate, putting respirators together, joining consortiums, and participation. And special recognition goes to Steve Mai and his team at Eclipse, who recently donated over 1 million masks locally, bought some IP, and are building, like PIA, are building mask manufacturing machines right here in Southwestern Ontario. One of the things that I think is something that we'll hear a lot today in the conference and during my presentation is the desperate situation for companies, and especially manufacturing, to find workers. So they're doing everything that they can. They're getting creative. They're paying more money. They're actually investing in automation to attract labor. And I think that those are all smart moves because as I think I say later in the presentation about robot and automation is a factory's best friend. So we've had a couple of wake-up calls. We've had a supply chain wake-up call. Just in time is broken. I'm seeing companies fly automation around the world so they can be first to market. Robots and automation stuck on ships waiting to be unloaded just doesn't make much sense in our industry. And so we've all seen these major disruptions. And I believe that this will make manufacturers rethink the single source, high throughput production models that we've seen of yesteryear. I see that the future is manufacturing more in local regions and to reduce those dependencies on some of the single point failures that we've had now by manufacturing in faraway lands. It might mean companies even building smaller, more modular automation in branch plants all around the world instead of just one large automated system. So we've also had, I think, a sustainability wake-up call, or we're going to have a sustainability wake-up call. This image here certainly is unsustainable. Companies like Amazon will need to right ship their products. I mean, how often do you get a big box from Amazon or from Walmart or whoever you've ordered from, and it's just one little tiny project in a huge cardboard box? So they need to match small products with small boxes, right sizing your shipping containers, and maybe ship multiple parts per carton. It's just not Amazon, it's your national department store, it's the Bay, it's your Walmarts. So we need creative automation to solve this problem and many other problems in us creating the waste that we're creating. They're going to need AI, they're going to need advanced analytics to help solve this problem. One thing that COVID-19 pandemic did was help us realize that we need a lot of change in the workforce, in the workplace, including distancing at work. There's a lot of people that we need to actually work. So it's hard for a toolmaker to work remotely. We need those key people in production facilities. We need them in automation integration facilities. For sales, for applications, for administration, they can be remote, and we're working on getting back to work soon. We need the test kits manufactured. We need material handling automation. We need upgrades to vaccine production automation, and we need to produce that PPE so that we have it locally. One of the examples that's on our radar is personalization. There's some consumer examples here, but the simple fact that you can go to Tesla without stepping into a dealership, order your custom automobile to your specification. And this is something that we are certainly going to see more and more of. And that affects every part of the supply chain. It also affects every part of the automation system that's building that new product or device that's made specifically for you. And of course, I'm thinking about medical devices in the back of my mind and other things that are personalized. So I wanted to step back for a moment and say, what do manufacturers want? Manufacturers want to get their automation on time. And right now that's not as, that's kind of a problem, right? Because your automation can be stopped because the PLC is not ready, because the robot is stuck on the ship. They want robust automation. They want service and sustainability. They want simple modular platforms so they don't have to invest in multiple pieces of automation. And they want to have flexible feeding systems so that they can produce a different family of parts on the same automation systems. And as well, manufacturers want intuitive, simple control systems. Manufacturers want innovation too. So the photo on the right-hand side is from a company called Planer Motors, and they're out of Vancouver. It is you'll probably see very similar products from a few different other companies like Beckhoff and Festo that are making this very innovative motor, which has 6 degrees of freedom and can send the pallets in any direction at any speed. So very, very interesting. And I encourage you to go find out more about Planer Motors, a really interesting, innovative product that can be used in all kinds of manufacturing areas, especially in packaging. So manufacturers want distributed systems. They want to be able to reuse their systems. They want connectivity everywhere, and they want that flexible feeding. Manufacturers also want more turnkey systems. They're shrunk like we're shrunk. So they want more systems that are ready to go and more subsystems that are ready to go. They tend to be seeking more advice. So I'm hoping they're starting earlier in their quest to have automation built. The machines aren't getting simpler, they're getting more complex. And manufacturers, from my conversations on the podcast and my conversations with robot integrators, is that manufacturers are becoming more open to recommendations. And of course, as I mentioned earlier on, the fact that robot and automation companies are buying more vision tells us that they're using more vision. And almost every machine, it seems, goes out with some kind of vision system that's going to afford more trace and trackability in manufacturing, especially for pharma, especially for medical device. In talking for this presentation, manufacturers want more flexibility and they want flexible automation. So an example here on the right on the image is a photo from Auto ClearPath in Kitchener-Waterloo. This is a really great example of what cell-based automation could look like. It can give you flexibility to support rapid reconfiguration. It could give you flexibility to support mass customization and supporting advanced artificial intelligence and machine learning. So you could have dynamic routing control. So if you need to route to a rework station, it's no problems. You can just do it on the fly. And of course, manufacturers also want reduced labor content because they can't find skilled labor. So whatever manufacturers can do to reduce that labor, they will absolutely consider buying. Here's another example. This is an image of Kroger Ocado warehouse in Aurora, Colorado, and it's the future of Sobeys here in Canada. It's a 3-story grid of storage crates containing groceries. On top of the grid is a fleet of robots picking and placing items, and it has 250,000 storage locations, 3 million routing calculations per second, and about 5 minutes to pack an order. The robots themselves move at 4 meters per second with just 5 millimeters between each robot. And this has recently been launched last year in Vaughan, Ontario, and you'll be able to order online at voila.ca or by downloading the Voila app. So it'll be very interesting because just like grocery automation, companies want to have flexibility. They want to be able to run many SKUs through their automation systems. They want fast or immediate changeovers. And one of the big challenges that's happening in manufacturing is that engineers are not in the plants. So they're relying on automation integrators, robot specialists to help them manage the automation that's on their shop floor. So in doing all this, I often ask my clients and customers, I say, hey, what's happening with time to market? Is it becoming expanded? Are people actually coming to you earlier in their programs? And the answer is no. No, they have a reduced time to market, and they're pushing that back onto the robot integrators and machine builders. We're seeing, I think, a push for co-opetition. So where, say in the healthcare sector, the pressure to innovate is really, really fast, and it's almost unprecedented. And this may push changes like the level of co-development of a product or a process that's already seen in other industries. And co-opetition is where you're engaging in both competing and cooperation with different companies. And the increased speed of market change and the reduction of research and development will create some of these unique partnerships. So how will automation change in the coming years? And we have a lot of challenges, as I mentioned, in the automation industry. We have a language problem between robots. Each robot has its own unique language. Although we also have an industrial ROS, robot operating systems, which you may have heard about. We have pools of data. We have major cybersecurity challenges, but we also have lots of money being invested on the young entrepreneurs who are creating these tools and solutions and robots and devices and robot accessories. And one of the things that is kind of interesting, I think and we'll talk about later in the presentation, is I think we're also running out of robot integrators. With the merger and acquisition activity that we're seeing in the market today, I believe that will pose some opportunities for young robot startup companies. So the image on the left-hand side is a robot from the USA DARPA Robotics Challenge called the DRC. It was a prize competition funded by the US Defense Advanced Research Project, hence DARPA, from 2012 to 2015. The contest was promoting innovation in human supervised robot technology for disaster relief. And you can see on the left-hand side that this is a robot that's actually fallen down. And you can Google YouTube DARPA robots falling down. It's very entertaining. And the last year was 2015, where robots were falling down, and all of them fell down. They broke hearts, but they also spurred innovation. The photo on the right is Boston Dynamics robots. Spot Mini is the yellow dog-looking robot. Atlas and Handle will be in the video that we're going to see in just a moment. The other robots that Boston Dynamics produces are called the LS3, Cheetah, and Big Dog. Hyundai Motor Group acquired a majority interest in Boston Dynamics and now holds 80%, with SoftBank holding the remaining 20%. So we'll go ahead and roll this video. My grandson and I really like this video, and it's choreographed to the 1962 song, Do You Love Me by the Contours. It's had 35 million views, and it was uploaded just under a year ago, December 29th, 2020. It was taped over 3 days, and the robots do the twist, the mashed potato, and other dance moves. Many people thought that this was CGI, but the robots were actually programmed to mimic the way people would dance. So Atlas are the white robots. Handle is the box handling robot, which will come up in a few seconds. Spot Mini is the yellow one. And why am I showing you this video? I'm showing it to illustrate a point. Autonomy, artificial intelligence, battery operated robots, fluid motion. We're in robots' golden age. Their mission is to imagine and create exceptional robots at Boston Dynamics that enrich people's lives. By building robots that have mobility, dexterity, and perception required to contribute to our modern society, they strive to create a future in which humans and machines work together to improve everyone's safety, productivity, and quality of life. The bots are meant for industrial and commercial uses, not for surveillance. Although police departments use Spot to inspect suspicious packages and environments for hazardous materials or explosives, or to assess hostile threats remotely, and to search structurally dangerous environments in emergency response scenarios. They believe that the robots can be used to keep first responders and the public safe. So these are the brat pack of robot manufacturers. They're Motoman Yaskawa, the Fanuc, ABB, Denso, Epson, Stoibli, Omron. And on the right-hand side, I'm including Mechademic robot. It's a very small robot. It's handheld, and it's very accurate and very innovatively built. So in the future, we're going to see automation will be all connected. They're going to be connected to ERP systems, to other plants. We're going to be connected to a production automation system. We're going to continue to see the connectivity in sensors and automation and in robots. And I think we're going to see more IoT and more Industry 4.0. We're going to also see smarter subsystems. So imagine assembly and functional test stations that will include more process control built right into the process machines. So this would eliminate secondary stations that might provide test measurements or functionality. So an example would be like a riveting station with force and distance monitoring built in with auto compensation to accommodate out of tolerance parts or assemblies. We're going to see the increased use of servo mechanical components that provide higher positioning accuracies and speeds in the automation process. We'll see these smarter third-party solutions. We'll see easier integration of the third-party systems. We'll see easier programming of these systems, and we'll see remote service via tools like AR. And automation companies really want this too, right? They want to push down the subsystems to be bigger performers that they order, and that it becomes a plug and play. And that'll be something that we'll talk a little bit more about, really plug and play automation. So I wanted to step back for a second and talk a little bit about collaborative automation. So collaborative automation is not just collaborative robots. And you can see from this slide, and this image is taken from an MIT research data report from a Financial Times article. And their point to that article is that human-robot collaboration is 85% more productive than just humans or robots alone. Robots do the dull, dirty, dangerous work and the processes that are not optimal for humans that will be automated, such as manual product inspection, the heavy work or dirty work environments. They'll take over the ergonomically taxing challenges that have a lot of repetitive strain in our workplace. You may have heard about Elon Musk's factory, where he headed in this direction to automate completely with robots, and he over-automated and ended up putting people in places where people made sense, because people are really good at anticipating, problem solving, reactive, and being creative. On the left-hand side of your screen, you're seeing Universal Robots, a family of collaborative robots. So enter the slower, safer, built-in technologies with safety, with a caveat that every automation process has to be safe and has to be documented as safe. But this is the introduction of true plug and play modules. And I'll be mentioning a few examples of collaborative automation because it's very important to the entire automation conversation. Easy to use, easy to deploy. In the UR case, they have an open API where anyone can write software and add tools. The other caveat is that cobots are not for everyone. They make up a small percentage of the entire global robot industry, maybe just 3 or 4%. They're slower than industrial robots, of course, because they're safer. And one of the big advantages is they allow small, medium enterprises the opportunity to try out robots. Everybody, I think, has probably heard or seen a story or seen a robot in the corner of a facility where somebody bought a robot. And that's kind of where collaborative robots will take over. One of the areas of specialization is that you can actually buy a collaborative robot and integrate it yourself. Universal Robots has about 50% of the cobot market. They have about 50,000 installations, but behind them is coming a lot of competition from companies in Korea, in Germany, and China, and in the USA. So this is a screenshot of what I like to think of as the new ecosystem that has been brought in by Universal Robots. So they have an ecosystem, an app store called UR+. And what they're doing is they've made a lot of changes, right? Not just the open API. They've opened up their app store of pre-configured, approved devices. So think of welding, sanding, measuring, parts feeding. And the interesting thing about the kits is that they are the algorithms are all done. So say you're looking at a sanding application, you order the kit, you get a sanding head from the supplier that's on the website. You get pre-configured algorithms and saving you weeks off of getting your automation application out the door into market. So what's the golden age idea? And a golden age is a period of great happiness, prosperity, and achievement, or as I prefer, a period of great endeavor where tasks were accomplished. The term originated from early Greek and Roman poets. But in a webinar I did last year for the Robot Industry Association, I interviewed the president of JLS Automation, a food automation company. He told me that one of the challenges is that people maintaining the automation that he builds didn't speak English. It was Spanish or French, Chinese, Vietnamese, or German, or even Russian. It did not make good sense for him to actually put the machine controls and the interfaces in English. So he would build them graphically. So he didn't need words. And that goes for error codes and error recoveries. It's pictures, it's video, it's graphics. ArcX is a company in Markham that focuses on optimizing human capital. They build error-proofing automated systems based on workflows for manual final assembly and poke yoke. They have created a system that connects manufacturing execution systems to the shop floor using multimedia, video, sensor input, sketches, and integrates third-party tools such as screwdrivers, torque wrenches, and pick systems. Columbus, Ohio's Ready Robotics is on a mission to make robot programming simple. They've created Forge OS that will give robots a common language in a factory or in a group of factories. They've created free online training resources, and their vision is to make robots as easy as a smartphone. Universal Robots, who I mentioned, already has an open API for their robot software, allowing all kinds of companies to build third-party tools on their platform, as we saw from the last slide. I believe that automation should be easier to use, easier to install, easier to connect. It will be sophisticated, but for the user, it should be easy. You know, when we talk a little bit about artificial intelligence, I think the term gets bandied around quite a bit. It gets investors excited. It is certainly overpromised, and there's a big difference between machine learning and artificial intelligence. But what we're going to find out is that there will be more and more artificial intelligence as time goes on, and it will be everywhere. It will be ubiquitous. So I wanted to talk a little bit about innovation. Positioning your company, your brand, and your service as innovative is important in the automation industry. If you're driving on the 401 just near Cambridge exit, you may be able to get a glimpse of the Mazak Innovation Center and the expanded ATS Automation Centers. They're both major facilities where customers, suppliers, applications engineers meet, innovate, and look for their next product, service, or interaction of a service that might be able to offer to their clients. Innovation is the lifeblood of the industry, and it's part of the daily life if you're in the machine building or automation industry. Innovation can come from many sources, from customers, from listening to customers, from competitive sources, and by being near to facilitation people and organizations, and perhaps startup companies in pharma or nuclear, wherever you want innovation to go. Often having a campus in a college or university or a regional innovation center where like minds or minds can collide. I predict as more and more companies invest in innovation centers, it will fast forward innovation with purpose, with gates, and with funding. One of the big benefits to the industry of things, or IoT, and Industry 4.0 is that we're starting to collect all kinds of data, or we should be. Likely we're collecting the data that we don't really need, but having the ability to collect the data, putting in sensors and the infrastructure is really important to figuring out what we have to do to connect our new machinery and our legacy machinery. So we have to think about budgeting for these ongoing monthly costs of automation, the cost for data storage and connectivity, and gone are those days where we could just buy a vision kit and never have to upgrade it until we needed to. When you're calculating and hopefully comparing the cost of operating automation, this cost should be part of your cost saving or your costs, and we call that the total cost of automation. In my conversations and prepping for this presentation, I asked some of my automation community where they're seeing what they're seeing in some software, and digital twin came up multiple times in conversations. Digital twin is that software representation of a complex process or maybe an entire plant to find problems while in design or in coding to reduce risk. Cybersecurity, I suspect, is something that we're underspending on as Canadians. And from a machine builder perspective, I think we leave this to the IT and to the OT departments, but it needs to be something that everyone in the supply chain needs to secure and needs to budget for. Axonify in Waterloo uses smartphones to train employees. 3 questions each day on your cell phone. It's a game, but it's a serious game. In a few short weeks, they know what employees know and then what they don't know. They can raise the training level of employees' departments quickly and efficiently, and all the time employees are having fun. One of the first customer case stories was Pep Boys in the US, their version of Canadian Tire. Rob Goldies from Robotics is a believer, and that's why he developed Beacon, a free software for robots, which he and I are both calling the appification of automation. It's one of the few things that we all carry around that in manufacturing is our smartphones. Each phone may have dozens of apps, and OEMs are trying to figure out ways that they can safely and securely connect to an automated device, such as a robot or an information system, to record, control, display, or send messages or reports via a simple app on your phone. Application of automation is in its infancy, and it will be interesting to watch. The end-of-arm tool market is huge, as robots have many lives in manufacturing, and likely will need multiple tools over the service year of the service year of a robot. I would hazard to guess it's almost as large as the robot industry itself. This particular robot end-of-arm tool precisely measures the OD and the ID of a small part with about half the accuracy of a CMM machine. It's an example of a very smart end-of-arm tool. So the last bunch of years, we've seen lots of changes in gripping and picking and placing, taking huge steps, especially in the era of Amazon, where shaving half a second off the pick time will get you a stream of new customers. End-of-arm tools have become more powerful and complex as they feature integrated sensors, compliance, they're programmable, and ultimately flexible. As well, let's not forget about 3D printing when it comes to what the future will look like in industrial automation. This is a custom 3D printed end-of-arm tool is something that we're seeing more and more. And it's just not experiments. It's used in production, especially in packaging and food and beverage, where you may have fast changeovers. Because you can custom print, you could use thin walls in the design of the end-of-arm tool and integrate the pneumatics that they can drastically reduce the complexity and the mass. Random bin picking has often been called the brass ring of industrial automation. It's been tried in 2D vision and now has largely been solved. Computing works, lighting's no longer a barrier, as projected light has solved the challenge of odd factory lighting. Companies such as Agile in Ottawa or Zivid and Photoneo, Canon, Capson Robots are all players in solving the 3D machine vision and bin picking automation. As some of you know, I worked at ATS Automation in their 380,000 square foot automation facility in Royal Oak Road in Cambridge when they had it. And as a marketer, I walked to the shipping department often. It was a good walk. I talked to toolmakers. I saw the automation. I took pictures. There was intent in the walk, and I would take different routes, but it was an expensive walk. With over $1 billion invested in autonomous robots of late, the expectations are high that manufacturers will be adding AMR fleets to their factories. The value of the market, according to Global Newswire, in 2021 is $1.97 billion, with a projection into 2028 of $8.7 billion and a CAGR of over 20%. Images that are on screen here are robots from MIR, KW's Auto, ClearPath, Waypoint, and Locus. But there's many other operating in this area, such as Omron and Fetch. Companies we should also watch are Wawrow, who builds charging stations for AMR, Seegrid and Vecna robots, who are, and with others, are automating forklifts. I really like this this image. The Hyrotech is a lights-out automated solution for black anodizing automotive parts manufacturing. It's a nice, clean, automated solution that's totally flexible, programmable, and can work 24/7. In this case, the dual-tooled robot moves parts from a chemical bucket to chemical bucket. If requirements change and volumes increase, it's easy. You just add a robot on top of a robot. And so that's what we're seeing right on the bottom part of your screen, Auto ClearPath, AMR robot, and above that is a Yaskawa Motoman dual-tooled robot. I had the pleasure of interviewing the CEO of Plus One Robotics. He's ex-Yaskawa Motoman. He started Plus One after seeing some of the challenge with distribution centers and package handling. The concept of Plus One is to involve people to help solve problems that robots can't solve by themselves. One person can supervise approximately 20 robots autonomously. If there's a problem, the robot stops, the operator sees the screen, and the operator solves the problem quickly, remotely, and keeps the sorting systems sorting. It's called supervised autonomy, and I think we should all be aware of it. It's a very, very interesting concept. One of the most exciting areas of future robotics is happening right on your farm. A new prototype hybrid robot from Canadian startup Nexus Robotics should be able to operate fully autonomously 24 hours a day. The robot La Chèvre, so that's French for goat, is able to recognize crops at all stages of growth. It uses AI to differentiate between weeds and crops and pulls out the weeds that are very close to the crops without damaging the crops. The goat identifies what's a weed and what's a crop and currently picks and removes over 95% of the weeds according to the 2020 field test results. The intention is to ultimately replace hand weeding and reduce chemicals used in farming. So this is kind of an interesting idea, is robots that cook. And I had the opportunity to interview a company that's solving the problem of securing chefs in the kitchen. Yes, robot cooks. You've probably seen the companies that are automating coffee kiosks and making pizzas with robots. And this is really interesting because it ticks all the boxes. These companies are using artificial intelligence. They're using data-based recipes. They're using machine vision. They're connected to the front of the store. They only use the correct amount of material. They know your allergies. It's a fascinating industry, and the use of technology in the robot can be serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then could be put in later in the day serving ice cream. A couple of interesting points is that the robot helps save the restaurateur money, and they can be in a lot of places. Like they can be in hospitals and universities, the food court, an airport, or downtown at your favorite restaurant. Another interesting part is that the robots, having a robot and automation as a kitchen, is the data that you're able to get from the system. And I had the chance to interview Dave Johnson from Dexi Robotics, and they're not selling the robot, they're licensing the system in a robot as a service model. The picture above, as you can gather, is as I took it from a YouTube video, and the company's called Gastronomus. The robots as a service market is said to be valued at $41.3 billion by 2028. Robotics is a company that I mentioned that connects robot tools to maximize uptime, as they invented that beacon software. Fetch Robotics, Locus Robotics, Invia Robotics, Savioke, which is a hotel robot, Cobalt Robotics, and security company Nightscope are all examples of companies that offer robots as a service model. And it's interesting, you just need more robots, you just rent them. They don't tax your CapEx. You don't need them, you send them back, and you pay by the hour, the day of the week, and the company that owns the robot will support and maintain the robots. And I see this merging to sometime as automation as a service. So I think that's going to be very, very interesting to watch over the next few years, where robots as a service transforms into automation as a service. I'm very excited about service robotics. Here you have on the left-hand side, you see Pepper Robot, which is, I believe, was part of SoftBank. On the right-hand side, you see Kitchener-based AvidBots robots that are dedicated floor scrubbing robots. So really, really interesting applications. It's a huge industry. It's just going to blow up over the next few years. And some of the future of robotics we're going to see smarter devices that work on their own. We're going to see environments that will integrate some of these consolidated devices. So I see the one thing that we're kind of missing is all these sensors not having a common connector. So I think that we're going to see in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll see some integrating platforms develop, many probably with overlapping scopes. Similar to what we've seen in the wired networks, I believe that some platforms will come up and they'll eventually narrow down to a few predominant environments. So to review, we're going to see more robots, more automation, more connectivity, more servos. We're going to see more automation everywhere. Robots and automation, I believe, will be easier to use. We're going to see more opportunities for robot integrators as M&A activities increase. And we're going to see more data, more software. AI will be everywhere, and smarter factories will be the norm. And those that don't automate will be left behind. I wanted to, since I have the Robot Industry podcast, I wanted to give you a little bit of insight into some of the metrics that I see. In interviewing the CEOs and CTOs, I get this kind of broad list of what's happening in the industry. VO Robotics are making a very clever system. It's a robot accessory that automatically turns any robot into a safe robot for people to work around. So if the VO systems recognizes a person in the workplace, they don't think it's a person, they know it's a person, they'll slow or they'll stop the robot. Another popular episode on the Robot Industry podcast is around harnessing automation with Carl Voss and Dave Henderson. Carl was formerly with Soft Robotics, and Dave works with New Scale Technologies and New Scale Robotics. The third highest listened to episode is around automated milking of cows. It's called Cows Love Robots. It turns out that Canadians are very bullish on using automation to milk cows, and it's certainly a good fit. And I hope you take a few minutes and listen to these episodes. So common themes on the podcast are artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, Industry 4.0, and getting started in automation. So some of the future challenges in automation in Canada, we need to use more automation. As I mentioned before in the introduction, I think a robot's a factory's best friend. And sometimes we as Canadian manufacturers, we act like branch plants. So what are some of the things that we can do? We can start an apprenticeship program. We can get involved in helping startup companies and give them resources to help make these products get to market sooner. And I think we need to also educate teachers in STEM. I remember at ATS, I was always called on to do tours of our factory, and I loved it, but I'm just kind of getting it now, right? That this was really, really important to tell our stories, to take schools around. You can give this as and someone accountable in your company to give tours, to reach out to schools, to get young people excited about the robots industry. And in the Robot Industry podcast, episode number 19, I talked to Dave Goodenough. He joined his local competitors and they created apprenticeship programs, not-for-profit organization. They do lunch, they do tours, and they reach out to teachers. It's a really interesting idea about if you're thinking, how do I get my next crop of toolmakers, of apprentices, of engineers? It starts by reaching out locally. And also supporting whatever those centers of excellence are. Maybe it's an innovation cluster where you live, or a regional innovation center, or a university. Also, too, wherever you can, make sure we're voting for more funding for innovation. So thanks for listening. I think what we'll do is we're going to open up the floor for some questions. So I will stop my sharing. And ask if there's any questions out there.
Hey, Jim, great presentation. You know, as a technology advisor for the National Research Council's IRAP program, a lot of the clients that you mentioned here today are part of the IRAP program. So that's very encouraging to see. So thank you for mentioning a lot of our clients, and again, to support, you know, innovation and funding and innovation. I just wanted to remind everybody of the IRAP support for innovation, and we continue to invest, you know, in up and coming companies. So thank you for that. I think that a couple of things that resonated with me. One was of concern is the brain drain of, you know, North American companies like Boston Dynamics being purchased by Japanese-owned SoftBank and Hyundai.
Yes.
Do you see that as a threat, you know, over in the next decade, that more and more, you know, Canadian and North American companies that have invested a lot of time, money, and effort into building these systems are getting acquired offshore?
Yeah, absolutely. And KUKA Robotics is an example of that. They're, you know, they're absolutely owned by Chinese interests. So, you know, and I think that as a manufacturer, you know, you have to also say, hey, you know, what robot companies do I want to do business with? But I do think that that's kind of a typical Canadian problem, right? Is where we build up these companies and they become 10 or 20 or $50 million companies, and they get sold off. And I'm not sure how to solve those things, except that I think we need to be cognizant of who we're selling to, and who makes a really good partners, and what is the longevity of the firm. Because I think these business owners, they really want their employees, they really want to be loyal to their employees. They really want to make sure it doesn't get shut down. They really want to make sure that the IP doesn't drain off somewhere that they've built and created. So I agree with you. It's a concern. I'm not sure exactly what the answer is going to be, but we certainly are watching it.
Great. I think the other thing that comes in that you mentioned that certainly is of great concern is the cyber intrusions and hacking of these automated systems. You know, we've seen a dramatic increase in security breaches, in hacks and whatnot. So much so that, you know, IRAP is offering services to our clients for cyber security, to make them better aware of the issues that are going on. And quite frankly, quite often the cyber part isn't built into the platform. It's sort of okay, well, now we built it, let's plug it in. And oh yeah, we have to make sure nobody can get into it. I really think that you know, a lot of these companies really need to innovate in cybersecurity to make sure that these are fundamental underpinnings of these platforms, so that these robots can't get hijacked. You know, as we have them running around warehouses and, you know, soon up our highways pulling transport bins, that cybersecurity is really needs to be top of mind. I just wondered if you had any examples of things like that where people have gotten themselves into trouble by not thinking security wise.
Yeah, I'm totally with you, Rob, on that. It's just something that every CTO and every CEO, the IT department, the OT departments, they have to be on. And I think too, the machine builders, which are putting together systems, I think just handing over, here's your machine, I think it's kind of the wrong way. I think it's a cooperative decision, and of course, it becomes very, very complicated once you build a sophisticated machine. But I think we all need to take part in understanding cybersecurity. It's the new crime, right? It really is something that we have to be cautious of and wary of. And I kind of think that a lot of companies are really ill prepared to do that. And I don't know if that's your perspective as well, that just people, it's kind of ostrich stuff, right? We're kind of hiding going, it won't happen here. And absolutely it will.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the general thinking is we're all honest people when we're building these machines, and we don't think about somebody trying to steal it until after. So that definitely needs to be built into you know, built into a lot of the thinking well in advance of ever putting anything on the shop floor or on our highways or anywhere. The last, you know, concern we have as a country and as North America, and you mentioned this again, is the fact that it's harder and harder to find people to work in this industry, whether they be men, women, high school students, and the initiatives that we need to do to encourage STEM and to really get involved in things like First Robotics and ways for our industry and the companies in automation to spur interest in this field, and to let these, let the next generation understand that, well, it's not a video game, but it could be close to it.
Yes.
Again, you mentioned Exonify, that makes learning fun at work. They're one of our IRAP clients, and very innovative and looking at the world differently, and realizing that these new wave of workers don't want to sit in a classroom for 3 hours to learn about something. They want to do it in real time using technology to do it. I know Automate Canada is certainly working with the colleges and the universities to help spread the word of automation and the skill sets that are needed. Do you see any nationwide efforts that are going on that can be supported by some of the clients that you're talking about?
I don't, and I think I think the problem that we have is we kind of have this communication problem, right? Is parents don't want their kids going into manufacturing because the way manufacturing used to be, and I think that companies like ATS, we used to reach out to literally, I would go to my kids' grade school and I would put on presentations. I would bring them tools and show them how things are being put on by robots. And I think that's it really has to be a ground led effort. And maybe that's something that we can talk about to Automate Canada, because they're in a really good position. But we have to start earlier than university and colleges. We literally have to start at grade schools. And I remember putting on my expense account a bunch of years ago for ATS and donating some of the Lego robot kits to a school. Just put on my credit card, just put it through my expenses, and just helping support STEM in that way. And there's just so many ways that we can reach out to schools. Like I said, that podcast that I did with Dave Goodenough from the US, where he just does this, right? He just gets his troop, and they meet, and he's got great stories of apprenticeships and changed lives, and it's such an interesting industry. Rob, one of the challenges that I just the other night, I went to a retirement party of a friend of mine who literally has worked for 30 years at ATS. And to your point about the brain drain, I think, oh my gosh, 30 years of automation. This guy is a great resource for anybody, but he's retired. So how do we replace him? I think we need mentorship programs pretty much across the industry, because he retired, but another guy retired. Like, there's 60 years of experience that we need to try to figure out, and how we can protect our knowledge base in the industry too.
Well, and it does take a village, and again, Automate Canada, you mentioned them as a great organization for being able to pool together interests of automation companies and really have a finger on the pulse of what's going on. So thanks, Jim. Those were my questions. Vlad?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Certainly exciting time we're living in robotics. And one question is, what advice would you give to young people, particularly young women, that are interested in going into robotics?
I think that I'm a little biased, right? Because my clients are all robots and such. I'm very excited about the industry. The industry is on fire. Like, you just cannot imagine all the different industries. My experience at ATS, just to back up a little bit, I was in their applications engineering program. I went into sales of robot systems and automation, and then I went into marketing for the last, say, 10 years of my stint at ATS. But I would absolutely say this is a great place to grow up. One of the best jobs, I think, in the industry is something called an applications engineer, where you kind of know a little bit about everything. You are producing the quote, you're producing the ideas, you're coming up with the concepts, and then you can always go into industrial sales. So I'm really excited about it. I think that there's lots and lots of ways to find out. There's lots of programs that even at the grade school level, I would certainly be buying my kid's a Lego robot program, but there's lots of things you can do online and get your Raspberry Pis and start creating it. The resources are out there, absolutely. The industry is great. It's been very, very good for all my friends that have been in it. So I would seriously consider doing that and encouraging that for sure.
Yeah. And do you think it's the right time to start a robot or robot integration company?
That's always a good question. You know what? I think so. I think with all the mergers and acquisitions that have just happened, we just saw that Systematics got purchased a few years, just this year, and they're about 120 or 130 employees, and they're now part of Samuel Strapping Systems. And I do think that it's a great time to start a robot company. I think that you should be very niche in your offering. You should locate where like fish where the fish are. So go where labor is strong, such as Windsor, Essex, Kitchener-Waterloo, Montreal. These are the places where all the experts are. So it makes it really, really interesting. And I would also create a model that engages with people and is very community oriented. So I do think it's a good time. You just have to be, I think, very specific, and you get that target bullseye customer who might be in distribution automation, or it might be in some other, but very tight area of capability, and not try to do everything for everyone.
And what do you see as the main challenges for automation, robotics right now?
I think supply chain is really hard. Imagine if your robots are stuck on a ship somewhere, right? And you're trying to deliver $1 million system, and all of a sudden you can't deliver your automation because you're missing this one piece of the pie. So I think that's one of the big challenges, that it will calm down eventually. But one of the big challenges, of course, with automation is money. It's a hard business because you need a lot of money up front, right? And I think some of the purchasers have really tough financial tough financial terms, and so I think those are some of the things that you have to have lots of money or good investors, and have to have a good team. But I think beyond that, there's so much business out there in the automation industry right now. It's ridiculous.
And here, in Windsor, Essex, we have an amazing cluster of over several hundred of companies that are machine integrators, mold makers, and Waterloo, and around Toronto it's another cluster. So why do you think Canadians are so good at industrial automation?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we've got a great education system. We've got really good universities and colleges that have good mechatronics programs. We've got a bunch of good big employers. And I think that's really helped spur a lot of companies. Like if I take my experience through ATS, I've seen Eclipse Automation, which came from ATS, right? So here's another. So all these companies that came out of ATS Automation, and ATS is kind of funny because they call it automation training school for a reason, because it's built so much automation. It's been so successful over the years that it creates this hotspot of automation, and then the Beckoffs come to Cambridge, and all the suppliers come, and the training comes, and it's just these big companies that have been the anchors of automation. And I think that's one of the really good things that we've done at ATS too. We were really good at reaching out. We were really good. I'm going to say this: we're really good at marketing, and that's not just because I was in the marketing group. Is we were really good at telling the story of investing in things like vision. And I know you have some very good vision companies in Windsor, Essex. Vision is one of these things. If I was creating an automation company today, I would absolutely positively invest in vision, and not just buying a vision system and plugging it in, but doing the hard stuff for sure.
No, excellent. Thank you. I think we're running out of time a little bit. So yeah, it's been a great times we're living in. for robotics and industrial automation, I believe.
And Jim,
Yep,
if I could
very
just sort of
exciting.
close with one more plug for companies that may be watching in automation to get involved with First Robotics or the Lego League. It's a great way to get our kids interested in something that's not classroom based. It's also a great way for companies to share the wealth and to actually give back to their communities. And also, you know, if you haven't looked into Automate Canada and joining that as an automation company, it's the only real true voice of automation in Canada. So if you're a company that hasn't joined Automate Canada, please look into them online and give them your support, your ideas, and they're a unified voice for automation companies in Canada.
Yes, and thank you both for that. I do agree with you. It's getting involved and putting those programs together, whether they're apprenticeship programs, whether they're outreach programs to schools, funding schools, funding First Robotics, and making people responsible and accountable for those things within your organization.
Exactly.
I think these are really, really important because these tool makers or these electrical engineers, they will come back to you, right? They'll join your company and they'll stay there for like 30 years, which is amazing.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for a great presentation.
Thank you, everyone.